All right. Oh Lord, needed the pet music. So, has Matt Healy reached out to you yet?
Not yet, but I'm still very hopeful.
I'm sure. Again, I bet it's in there somewhere once you get past my DMs. Ah,
He's a busy man.
yeah, right. Now he isn't. Taylor kicked him out already. He's got nothing else
I
better to
don't know
do.
what you're talking about.
Okay, yeah, you keep pretending that didn't happen. So unfortunately, there's only a screen here. I can't like hug you and squeeze you like I normally do, to wake you, get you
Yeah,
going.
when you break my back.
It's all love.
Oh yeah.
It's all love.
And
All
then
good.
the physical therapy that ensues after.
What you talking about?
You know what I'm talking about.
No, I don't know what you're talking about. All right. So Haley, dear, because you're amazing and you're wonderful, I wanted to have you on here. Starting with, tell us who you are and about doing it disabled.
Okay, so my name is Haley Diaz. I am a chronically ill person. I have a condition called POTS, postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome. After getting diagnosed with that condition, I really needed an outlet since I was limited in the things that I could do physically. So I started a podcast with my co-host. Her name is Catalina. She's a 2-time cancer survivor, and it's called Doing It Disabled. So we started that podcast. I also started a small business called The Humorous Med during PA school. I'm also a PA, and I like raising awareness for individuals with chronic illnesses, different disabilities, medical conditions, and just showing that we can take up space in a world that wasn't necessarily made for us. And yeah.
So to help spread that awareness, because this is also very uh, useful for medical education.
Yeah.
What is POTS?
So POTS is a dysfunction of the autonomic nervous system. So the way that I explain it is autonomic is anything automatic. So your breathing, your heart rate, your blood pressure, your blinking, literally everything that you don't consciously think of that your body does automatically. You can have an issue with that when you have a condition such as POTS. POTS can develop from anything, a surgery, an infection, a trauma to the body. In my case, it was an infection. I've had friends who have acquired it after COVID, after surgeries, concussions, traumatic brain injuries. So it's a syndrome because there's not one cause and there's a lot of different symptoms, and it doesn't have one etiology or one known cause. There's a lot of things that can cause it.
And in your case, you have a wonderful experience when water touches you, right?
Yes. So I also have a condition. They say it's rare. I don't think it's rare. I think more and more people are coming out that they have it. It's called aquagenic urticaria, which is a super fancy way of saying water hives. So whenever my skin is exposed to water of any kind, whether it's the shower, the pool, if my own tears, the rainwater, I break out in hives. In my case, it's only from the waist up, and then there's severities, right? It's a spectrum. So there are some patients, these are the ones that I think are definitely rare, where they can't even drink water. There are some patients that can't shower because of the response that their body gives, this allergic response. So I would say mine is definitely more on the mild to moderate side. And if I'm able to stay away from my quote unquote triggers, um, otherwise I don't have like this allergic reaction.
I love how formal you become with it all. You're just ready to like roll with all this and stand there at the podium and give a medical conference.
I have a podcast, so
Which we'll make sure to link on there for anybody else who'd be interested, because I'm sure a lot of people will, some people anyway, will perk up when they hear this, like, oh, this is cool. So,
yeah.
so tons to ask about in there. So first off, so what made you want to go into medical?
Honestly, my entire life I wanted nothing to do with medicine because of a lot of the medical trauma that I experienced through my family members. I just wanted absolutely nothing to do with it. But then for me, it kind of almost became out of necessity because of the rare medical conditions and the things that were happening to my family and my loved ones. I figured, well, what better way for me to take care of them than to go into medicine and learn as much as I possibly can. Also, I was constantly getting put in these situations where I was experiencing the bystander effect. So, for example, when I was in middle school, a young boy was, we were dancing. It was like a dance. It was like a school dance, and he started seizing. And the way that I tell you, it was like in the movies, like the person's in the middle seizing, and then everybody just kind of like becomes a circle around them and just keeps backing up. And I remember being there in that moment and nobody was rushing in. And I kept experiencing moments like that in my life as I got older, and then I started to become educated and I became the person that was rushing in because nobody else was. Now, that's not to say that that's always the case, but it just happened to me enough times where I felt helpless and I didn't want to be put in that situation. And I didn't want somebody else to not have help in that situation if I knew that I could do something about it.
Are you usually somebody who is good at rushing into situations and kind of responding to things as they happen,
Yeah.
even if
Yeah.
it's something new or something that you've kind of been used to doing?
No, most of the time it's something new. But if I'm able to speak to the person, then I can kind of like try and figure out what's going on. Or if there's blood involved, then I know I need to stop the bleeding. I need to make sure things are clean. Like it depends what is going on. But if it has something to do with that, like in those scenarios, I'm like, okay, well, at least I know I need to do this so that X, Y, and Z doesn't happen, so we can hold them over so they can get the proper help that they need. So it's kind of like I guess more of like a triage situation is what I would say I'm good at.
And that you were always good at, or that you just kind of learned to get good at it?
I honestly can't tell you because it's been part of me since I was like 8 years old. So I can't even remember before that. I think
Mhm.
I just learned what needed to be done. Um one of the first experiences that I remember was like somebody's sugar going down, right? Like a diabetic, my grandmother. And it's like I would tell her, "What do you need?" Is something that "Okay, get me this. Okay, go and get that. Okay, do it." And then from there you kind of just figure it out. You don't even know what to do half the time. You just ask the person if you can, "What do you need?" They tell you and then you're receptive to that and you do what it is that they need. That's kind of how it works, right?
Medicine
So,
is so simple.
no.
All right, so you mentioned before that there was not medicine, that is, was not really something that you were interested in doing at first. What were you interested in doing?
My entire life I wanted to be a journalist. My entire life. I wanted to be a writer. More but I was more so interested in interviewing people, which is why I find the podcast amusing at this point to me because I circled back somehow and still ended up doing that just in a different way.
Which is great because you get to kind of like still do what you love and what you instinctively love, love to do, and put it all together while doing medicine and everything else.
Exactly.
So, what about journalism were you interested in?
I think it's the collective storytelling. Also, there's a bit of an investigative portion depending on the facet of journalism that you go into, but I've always been interested in the stories of people because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter your title, it doesn't matter like what you necessarily do for a living, but kind of like the things that make you who you are the stories and the things that you've experienced. So being able to learn from others in that regard and also just uplift others' voices and share those stories is something that I always found intriguing and something that I personally have always found a lot of strength in. Like I never met one of my grandparents, but his story has always been something that has really motivated me and has always been in the back of my head and in my day to day. So it's like things like that are just really important to me.
I wonder, so why exactly? What is it that you like so much about other people's stories?
I'm not sure. I've been thinking about this a lot recently. I'm not sure if it's because of my cultural background. Um, I think like there's a lot to dive into on that, but I guess have always felt like these people that came before me went through so much so that I could live in this country, so that I can be where I am, so that I can have the opportunities that I have, that I feel like I wouldn't be doing them justice or like honoring them if I wasn't, being like influenced or motivated by those stories to be a better person, a better professional, etc. So, yeah, I'm not sure, but I've always been really big on like honoring the people who have helped me or the people before me, whether they're related to me or not.
Hmm. Certainly very people focused, clearly.
I mean, my favorite Disney princess is Mulan from like a young age, so I think that sums it up.
Why Mulan?
I think I relate to her honoring again her family, like from a young age. I saw her, when she goes outside and she's like speaking to her dead people, like again, she's honoring her family, she's asking for wisdom and advice and guidance, but also this she feels the need to kind of be there in a certain way for her dad, which is something that was very big, as you know, growing up in my life. And my favorite book growing up was Anne of Green Gables. Like, again, you have that theme of the girl who has to kind of like be there and show up in a specific way that is outside of her age and outside of her role in society. So I've always resonated with those female characters.
It's funny because that's still my usually the Disney movie I choose also is Mulan. But anyway, so there seems like a lot of like deep personal connections to different people,
Mm.
different family members, and so on. Do you form a lot of deep connections with many people?
I don't think so. Um, I feel like I'm very empathetic though. I feel like I'm very receptive. I think that a lot of times I'll meet somebody and then I feel like I'll pick up on a lot of things that they do or how they'll react to certain things in a short time, and then I'll feel like I know them relatively quickly, but that doesn't mean that I have a deep connection with them or that I feel seen or understood by them. I just feel like they feel seen and understood by me because they express that. So it's not always it's not always both ways.
And how does that feel to you that it doesn't always go both ways?
I usually don't, for lack of better words, care because I'm not trying to get anything out of relationships per se, but it can feel kind of isolating sometimes because you start to feel alone in that sense
What do you mean by alone?
because you don't feel like you're seen. Like you feel like, and I think a lot of like helping people feel this way from the ones that I've spoken to. It's like you're there, they know they can depend on you. You're the strong friend. You're the one that shows up. But then it's like who's the one that checks in on the strong friend? Who's the one that shows up for the strong friend? And so that's where I have my deep connections, is where I have those relationships with people who check in on me, show up for me. I can pick up the phone and call. That's where I make those deep connections. But for the most part, no, I wouldn't say that I have a lot of those.
Mm. So, since you bring up friend, what is a friend to you? How would you almost define that for yourself?
I think a friend is someone who accepts you as you are, but is also able to call you out if they think that you're doing something that maybe is not beneficial for you or that doesn't align with the things that you've personally said that you've wanted. So it's like this very open and honest, transparent communication. A friend is also somebody who doesn't hold things over your head, whether that's monetarily or because they provided an act of service for you. That's very important to me. The minute that somebody holds something over my head, I don't consider them to I don't consider myself being able to have that deep connection with them because I don't keep score when I do things for people. And I think that that's very important. Um, and a friend is somebody consistent and reliable to me, somebody that you can have shared, explore shared interests with, and that you enjoy each other's company, and it doesn't feel like a chore or a habit. That's a friend to me.
Do you have a lot of people that fit that criteria for you?
I feel like I have a handful of people, and they're all in different um like realms of my life in a way. Like some I've gotten through PA school, like you, some I've met in undergrad and college, some I met, I have like three friends from my childhood that I'm still close to from like the age of 5. But other than that, but again, they're all in like different realms.
So they're all very different people from different areas that, again, don't even know each other, not even part of the same group or anything like that.
Yeah, I think that's a good way of explaining that.
So would you say that it's like, how do I want to word this without it being too on the nose? Um, Typically kind of view people individually, as in you're evaluating people based on their individual characteristics rather than any kind of group or any other associations.
Yeah, I think that that's a fair assumption.
I'll probably have to come back to. I feel like I didn't word that right, but I feel like it was still coming out right. Anyway, so I'm gonna jump to the languages and stuff because it's just been on my mind for a while. How many languages are you speaking now or trying to speak?
Well, 3 or 4.
This is me now,
How
like,
many Yeah, how many do I actually like, am I trying? Like 5.
and why?
I have, again, always been fascinated by communication and improving communication. And in the field that we're in medicine, I've experienced a lot of patients who receive second-class medical care because of a language barrier. And it's incredibly frustrating when people don't follow protocol or don't take that extra step to try and make sure that they're effectively communicating with the patient. Raising your voice if someone is deaf, or raising your voice if someone speaks a different language than you and speaking a little slower does not mean the other person understands what you're saying. And you being able to have a 15-minute visit with a patient that speaks the same language as you, but then walking into a room and having a 5-minute visit, showing an image or something, and then being like, yeah, yeah, okay, and walking out is not the same care, as the 15-minute visit that speaks the same language as you. So that makes me mad. That makes me mad. And that's where I started to kind of learn the languages of my patient population or get the help that is required by law when you have a patient that doesn't speak the same language as the provider, and follow protocol in that sense. And then also I just kind of found out that I'm a little bit good at it. Um, and so that's also fun too sometimes, not doing the thing that's hard, because I already do that a lot. So it's nice to learn and to do something enjoyable. And also languages opens up the world, right? Because now you're tapping into music, film, art, history of a different culture that you now have access to, that you can now try and understand and interpret. And then you're also able to communicate with a bunch of other people that you couldn't communicate with before. And how wonderful is that? So
And it sounds like that's important to you, the ability to kind of open up these possibilities to
yeah.
talk to different people, explore different cultures and in music styles and everything else.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I think that circles back to storytelling, because how can you tell these stories? How can you hear or listen or share these stories, excuse me, if you don't understand them in the first place? Like just down to the basic fundamental of language.
It's a very practical sounding answer. Well, it's true. But the languages, I mean, you weren't learning them at first in order to use it for medical purposes, right? You were doing this before for your own reasons, and you just kind of happen to use it and apply it to medicine? Or do I have that backwards?
Backwards, actually. I started learning Portuguese because I had such a big Portuguese patient population where I was working, Brazilian patient population where I was working. And so I started learning Portuguese. And then from there, it kind of just took off. But you're right. My first language that I wanted to learn was Mandarin. I was in high school, and my
Oh, easy.
Mandarin teacher, yeah, okay. My Mandarin teacher
Yeah.
quit,
God.
and the only thing that I had available to me at the time
Did
was
you make her
French.
quit?
No, asshole. And um,
She's like, oh, I'm done to this person.
they they told me, they were like, "Oh, the only option you have is French." And me at the time being ignorant and a teenager with all this angst, I was like, "I don't want to be basic and learn French like everybody else." I ended up loving it, and I studied it for 4 years, and I can read it, I can understand it. I'm hesitant to speak it because I know I don't sound, as great as I would like to sound. That's my own insecurity. But yeah, so French was the third language that I learned because growing up I was speaking English and Spanish. I learned French, Portuguese, very similar to Spanish and French in my opinion. There's some differences. I love the accent, so then I started learning it for work, and then from there I just kept going.
I have so much catching up to do to get to where you're at with these languages now.
You speak a bunch of stuff that I can't.
No, I need to do French. I need to do French.
No, get it together.
Yeah, I need to do French. I don't know. I have a thing with the French right now. I'm in a French
Love
phase.
them.
So, yeah, I don't know what's wrong with me. So anyway, okay. So you have a ton of languages, certain pragmatic reasoning, just because I think it's kind of cute and sort of adds. What tattoos do you have? Yeah, I know you roll your eyes. Oh, he thinks something's cute. Yeah. What
I
are these
don't. I think
tattoos?
I
Tell
have
me the story.
11 or 13 now. I don't remember how many I have now. I have to sit down and count
Oh
them.
my god.
My most recent one is this one. It says El arte de cuidar, which I think is very what's the word? Like, I think it just suits
Well,
me.
yeah, I would have said it's very necessary in your case.
Yeah. So it means the art of caring or the art of taking care of someone. I have lights will guide you home in here. I'm really bad at this like flipped mirror thing. That's in my dad's handwriting from the Coldplay song Fix You. I have the umbrella because water allergy. I have a Robert Frost quote, a boat, and an airplane in honor of my dad and my grandpa. I have para luego es tarde, which means for later is late. My dad's birth year. Trust your heart if the seas catch fire. It's an E. E. Cummings poem, my favorite poet. I have Don't Let the Bastards Get You Down in Latin. Love that. I met a World War II nurse, and that was the saying like for her regiment, and that really stuck with me. And then I have a 1975 quote on my back, and I have a tattoo on my ankle.
And we gotta mention it, of course, for those paying attention. Although water makes you break out into hives, apparently tattoo ink does not. So
Yeah,
go.
and I slowly started experimenting with that before I got a tattoo on my back.
Thank God it was slowly.
Yeah.
So you mentioned before you enjoyed something that's easy with languages and so on, something that comes easy to you. So languages apparently comes easy to you. What doesn't come easy to you? What's hard for you?
So when I got into college, I switched from journalism to biology for my major. And I vividly remember my counselor looking at me and looking at my scores and saying, "Why the hell are you going into biology? You got like the one of the lowest scores to be able to even get into this major. Like you're not even allowed to take a science class until you retake this math test so that we can see an improvement in your score, so then we can put you in the entry level biology course.
Which math was it?
So I don't remember. I know they made me take like pre-calc and I had to take, I think, trig or something. But
More useless.
they wouldn't let me do it unless they wouldn't let me take bio 1 unless I successfully completed those math courses or obtained a score on something, a specific score. So, yeah, like math to a certain point I'm good at, but then after that it's Chinese to me. I don't understand. The Chinese I never got to learn. It's that. And I don't know. There's just a lot of, I guess, more in the math, like physics, absolutely terrible. Do not talk to me about a circuit. I don't want to know. Let somebody else do it. I don't care. I'm not interested. Um,
Is physics a circuit?
physics
Sounds
too. I don't know how I passed, but yeah, there's like circuits,
like,
electricity. Leave me with my natural light and my candles. I'll be fine. I'm gonna go to bed early anyway. I just yeah, so those are some things that I don't.
so what was hard about this though?
It just doesn't make sense, Jason. I just don't understand.
Is
I
it
don't
math specifically, or are there like other subjects or something?
No, definitely math. Like math and science in certain cases, like like physics, organic chemistry, the equations of that. Put me in the lab and I'll get an A because I did. I always got A's in lab. Like when you put me to actually do something, I will do well. I will figure out the process. But the actual like the back portion, the equation, I don't know what the hell. Good luck, Chuck. I'm gonna explode something.
So is it like the theory aspect of it, or are you learning better by just being able to physically do it? You have to
Yeah.
actually do the thing yourself.
Yeah, that everybody's always out here like the theory of things, like why. I'm like, I don't care why. I want to do the thing. Let me do the thing. And we'll figure it out from there, right? Do you care why it works or do you need it to work? Okay. That's how I feel with certain things. Certain things I understand you need to understand the background of it. But when it came to like chemistry and things like that, I'm like, I don't really care to understand how it works. I just know that I need to do this to get this product, so let's keep it going.
I just keep going till you get there. All right. Kind of sounds a little bit more like a practical sort of approach to it too. Like you're more interested in just the result, getting it done, rather than spending too much time thinking about how it gets done or what are all the details.
Yeah, philosophy, for example, is another one that I'm not a huge fan of because I just, I think to a certain extent it's important to dive in and to be like, oh, well, why is this way? And it's part of understanding. It's also part of the story. But to sit there and do that the whole day, why is the sky blue? What is the meaning of life? Well, no one's going to figure it out, are we? No. Okay, waste of time. Let's go enjoy the beach or something. Like, stop.
Do you not? Do you spend a lot of time in your head? Because it sounds like you want to be active. You want to do stuff.
Yeah, if I'm alone, I'm like I'm talking to myself the whole day. Haley, what are you doing? Haley, what's this? Haley, how are we gonna? Haley, 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 Haley. So I'm like, yeah, let's do something. So
Make it so how many voices are in your head?
there's at least two.
You sure?
Yeah, I
I'm
think
pretty
there's
sure
two.
with you
I
there's
think
more than that.
I think there's two. I think there's one that it's the one that talks to me and then the one that responds back. It's just two.
Do they stay in the same language, or are they also bouncing between languages?
Well, yesterday I was driving and I saw a sign on the highway like going down 826 and I was reading it in Spanish, but it was in English and I was like, "What the hell does that mean?" And then I was like, "Oh, wrong language." That happens to me a lot.
And with your driving, I bet this is just a disaster waiting to happen. Yeah,
You're alive, aren't you?
uh, I mean, I was just imagining you telling that story, and I could already like envision someone or myself in the passenger seat, like, yeah, just grabbing the roof and stuff.
Yeah.
Like, ah, hey,
Rude.
yeah, yeah. So, okay, let's see. So, let me see what else. What else? What else? How are you dealing with day to day stuff?
In what regard?
So, let's call it the I call it the mundane shit. So it's like just taking care of yourself, making sure the bills are paid, making sure the trash is taken out, your physical space. That's another one. In fact, let's do that one. Your physical environment, like
Okay.
room and everything else, and keeping things pretty and organized.
Turned
How
out
are you
pretty
with that
right
stuff?
now, I'll tell you that.
Why?
That messes with my head though. I'm like, I can't even be in my room. I'm like, no puedo con esto. Like, ah! It's because I flipped my bed. So that
Mhm.
took a lot of energy. And when I flipped my bed, I had to reorganize a bunch of stuff. So it's not everything is in the place that it needs to be, and it's been like a work in progress little by little because of my energy levels the last 2 weeks. So
Okay, so how important is it to kind of keep your physical surroundings looking nice?
I almost feel like it's a reflection of how well I'm doing mentally. So if the space around me is a mess, then I don't feel well, and vice versa. Like it's also a way of being like, oh, she's had a lot going on. Her space is a mess. I don't like it pointed out to me either. It's like I know that my space is a mess. I don't need you to tell me that my space is a mess. But then like sometimes I'll get like this random burst of energy. I'll be like, I'm going to change my life. And the first thing I do is fix my room. Once my room's done, I'm like, "Oh, my life is great. Everything's calm. What a safe, clean space. Everything's okay." And I literally just organized my room. I didn't do anything else.
Do you happen to have these moments a lot where you sort of just decide I'm gonna fix my life?
Yeah, but it's my room.
So your life is your room.
Essentially.
This is
No,
the connection.
I'll make to-do lists. I have this massive whiteboard. I'm like pa 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 pa, like doing all this stuff. And like I'll organize everything, and then it's like, ah man, I need a nap, you know?
And do you ever actually get around to getting it done?
Yeah, yeah, I'll get it
Like
done.
all
Sometimes I
those
get the
things you
whole
put on the
thing.
board?
Sometimes I get the whole thing done. Sometimes it's like in pieces, but at least it's there for me to like go back to and be like, okay, now I feel okay enough. Let's wrap this up. Let's finish this. Let's get this going. Um, yeah.
Hmm. So what about the other stuff? Again, paying bills. How about taking care of yourself physically? Because that's definitely going to be hard.
So that's been a little harder for me this month because I keep having these issues with my iron. So it messes with my energy. And then I'm the type of person that always feels like they need to be doing something, that they feel guilty when they're resting. So I've been trying to transition myself since graduating to understand like you don't always have to be doing something. It's okay to relax. It's okay to like do nothing for the day or stay in bed. Um but like when it comes to bills, for example, now I try and put them on like automatic, like an automatic payment thing, so that I make sure that that's done, because that was something while I was going through college that was always a weight on me, like financially. Like, I'm in college, I'm in my 20s, I want to be financially independent, but I'm still a full time grad student. Ugh, like, it's a lot. It's like you always feel like you're like being choked, like you're trying to keep your head above water. So now that I'm finally able to work and I have a job, that stress has kind of gone down a little bit. Not having to be, studying 24/7 has gone down a little bit.
God.
So I have now room for other things and my thoughts, and trying to enjoy like the process of things instead of just the final result, which is something that I've always done, right? It's like I'm trying, my goal is to get to this, my goal is to get to this. It's like, okay, well now there's not necessarily a goal to get to. Now you can work on the things that you enjoy, but how am I enjoying that process, right? Trying to like flip it in my head.
And what are the things that you enjoy?
My podcast, meeting people, learning languages, being creative without it, without it being with the purpose of monetizing or capitalizing on it, like making things, expressing myself in whatever way I want to, going to museums, eating new food, laying out on the beach for 2 hours in a reasonable temperature, things like that.
You're in the wrong state, girl.
I know, and I can't wait for the summer to end.
Mm. So what do you create? Tell us
I
what you
like
create.
I like making designs, whether they're like for stickers or for t-shirts. Like I've always, not always, I've recently gotten more into that. Last weekend I made candles out of seashells. That seems fun. I think I'm aging because now I'm getting into candles. Apparently that's a thing that happens. Um, I'm definitely entering that phase of my life.
Oh,
Um,
goodness.
yeah, I like to paint. I'm really bad at it, but I fucking enjoy it. So, am I allowed to curse on here?
Of course.
Oh, wonderful. I do that a lot.
Get nasty, girl.
I like listening to music obnoxiously loud and annoying all of my neighbors when I come home at the end of the day, and then just sitting in the car in the driveway, like, when you're like, oh, this is gonna end soon, I just have to stick through it. Nope, they have to listen to it for another 20 minutes while I unwind from my day and decide to go inside. I like doing those kinds of things.
You seem to have a lot of interests.
Yeah, yeah.
I love it. You just like, yeah.
I don't know, because I
Then
think that that's
there's
normal.
us.
Oh, you broke up. What
Why
did
do you
you
think
say?
it's normal?
I
Why do you
don't
think
know.
it's normal?
I think it's weird to have this whole life and to only do one thing. I mean, don't get me wrong. If you really like that one thing, I'm all for you doing it. But if you like a bunch of other things, like I like bubbles. I like sitting outside on my porch and blowing bubbles sometimes. Okay? I enjoy that. I want to be able to do that. But I also like the idea of maybe like ceramics or pottery. And I want to do some of that. And I also like helping people and practicing medicine. I'm going to do that too. Um yeah, you know. Maybe tomorrow
So,
I'll want to learn how to French braid my hair upside down. I'm going to do that. Like
so a theme that's coming out here pretty strongly at this point. It's like all of these different hobbies, all of these different interests, kind of playing around with a lot of different things. And it doesn't appear like there's any particular practical reason other than just entertainment or curiosity. Is that about right?
yeah, because I think for the majority of my life, right, like going to like PA school, like studying medicine, you're doing this, to have a career, to help people, to establish yourself. But I never had room, and I never had like certain like hobbies or things growing up. So now it's like, okay, now I'm at this point where I can explore those interests that I had when I was younger, those curiosities when I was younger. And I think it also goes back to just like not needing to know why, like just having this feeling of like, oh, this interests me, let me explore it. If I like it, I do it. If I don't do it. And that's okay too. Like there doesn't have to be a result, or again, capitalizing on something. Not everything has to be done like to capitalize on it in some way, or you don't have to be good at everything that you do or try. Like it's just for your own self-fulfillment and enjoyment, and I think that that's fine too.
And you've always been that way?
I think that more so I think I have always been that way, but I think I've more so tapped into that since getting sick, since becoming chronically ill. Because I wasn't able to like go out clubbing, go out partying, like hiking, long walks, a lot of like physically strenuous activity. So I ended up channeling that more with like my mind and my creative and like what can I make, what can I create? And you can do that sitting, you can do that laying down, um, and exploring things in that realm too.
When did you get chronically ill, by the way? It's like for reference here.
So I started experiencing symptoms in 2018, at the end of 2018, and then it got progressively worse in 2019, and then I got like really bad in 2020, and then I was officially diagnosed. We're actually coming up on the anniversary of my diagnosis in August of 2020. I got diagnosed.
So how old were you when you first were diagnosed?
23.
Mm-hmm. It's like, do the math. How old are you now?
26.
Okay. Just for reference, so the people watching kind of like, oh, so when did this start? Like, you know. Anyway, certain curiosities because I have a feeling of like what I would probably type you. This is
Yeah,
where
you
we get.
keep going back and forth with me about this.
I know, and it's like I've had this sneaking suspicion for a long time, and that's why I'm like, I don't care one way or the other. I have to try to nail this down.
See, but
But
you can't put me in a box, Jason. So you're gonna
oh,
keep
really?
teeter
Why not?
tottering.
Why
You're gonna
can't I
keep
put you in
teeter
a box?
tottering because you can't, man. You just can't. I'm so like out here. I'm so whimsical. You can't put me in a box.
It's funny you say that. It's funny. It's hilarious.
No, I
Anyway,
just yeah.
it, yeah, whatever. Let me get back to what I was trying to like go into. How are you with like romantic relationships?
I'd say I'm very loyal. Um, you'll have to ask me specific
So,
questions.
so let's take it in different pieces because I'm curious. How do I want to ask this? So, what makes you sort of like interested in people or interested in someone? Can you tell quickly about that person that you like them, you're interested in them? Can you tell where you stand with them quickly?
I think I'm trying to like think. I think I can tell when I like somebody. I normally don't. Like it's actually kind of hard for me to like somebody. Not hard, but it just I don't easily like people, I don't think, in that way.
Why?
Um, huh?
Why?
I don't know why. I don't know why. I just don't.
Okay.
Um, I'm trying. And I think that because of that, I get very attached when I do feel that way about somebody. So I'll stay in relationships longer than I should. Number one, because I have this whole like I don't give up attitude, like I'm gonna work through a problem, right?
Mhm.
Two, because of the commitment aspect of it. It's like, okay, well, I made this commitment. I care about this person. I want to work through any conflict. And I don't think that there's a problem with that. And, things happen, life happens. The whole give up attitude thing. And then because I don't feel like I form those feelings so easily that I'm like, well, let me like hold on to this because I feel like this, right? So yeah.
Hmm. So inevitably, if you have to break up, what happens there? How do you manage that emotionally?
So in some of my relationships, they ended and I didn't need to mourn it because I was essentially mourning it the whole time, or that portion that it should have been ended. I was like constantly getting confirmation like, this is why you feel this way, this is why the relationship needs to end, this is why the relationship is ending. So when it did end, it was like, okay, it's done now. Like, I don't, obviously, like, you're sad. um it's there's always some sadness there, but it's like I don't need to mourn it because I had already been quote unquote mourning it, suffering, mourning it. Because I didn't end it sooner because it wasn't ended sooner. And then in other regards, it's just like this lack of rationality or logic that I have, that it's like, this is ending, this needs to end. But it's like, but why? But why? But it'll change. But it'll change. And it's like, no, it's not going to change. That's it. So yeah, I think in that aspect, I'm probably the most impractical. And I think you would agree.
I'm just like, I'm letting you go in your own words, girl. Like,
Yeah, I don't know why. I mean, I guess I do know why, but yeah, I struggle, have struggled in that aspect.
can you be more specific on what you struggling on? What do you think you're struggling on? How do you find yourself in these situations?
I feel like there's a lot, like it's a lot, and I don't want it to become a therapy session. Um,
Whatever
but
you're
again,
comfortable.
it's that like I crave connection, like just how I want to be there for somebody, like how we've spoken before.
Mm-hmm.
That's not always reciprocated towards me, and I'm okay with that. But then in a romantic relationship, that is reciprocated towards me. So then it's like, I guess I hold on to it because it is being reciprocated towards me, or it was at some point reciprocated towards me, or I think that it will be reciprocated towards me again. But the issue that, and what I try and focus on now, is that if I'm consistently reciprocating, then I should be consistently reciprocated back, or at least communicated as to why, something is happening, because it's not always going to be the same level, or things happen in people's lives. People struggle with certain things just like I do. So it's not always going to be the same energy being given, the same consistency. But at the end of the day, there should be a reassurance or a consistency that's always there no matter what. And so that's where I'm at in this stage, where it's like, if that's not happening, then I shouldn't be in this space. I shouldn't be in this relationship. So I need to remove myself from it, whether I want to or not. It's more of like the logical part of my brain is being like, okay, Haley, it's time now because you've already been through this enough times. You don't need to stay in this longer than you need to.
I guess the question I have is, do you feel like you're very aware all the time of where your relationship is at? Like
Yes.
emotionally, the connection between you and the other person, like you're very consciously aware all the time of how that is.
Yeah. If so, but again, this also comes from like childhood and things. If somebody even like shuts the door a certain way, or if their tone is a certain way that it's not usually, I pick up on that and I become very sensitive towards that. And that's where you would say my emotional side comes in and my logic leaves, because it's like, well, why'd you do that? Why are you acting like this? Okay, something's wrong. Something's wrong now. Okay, how do I attend to this? How do I change my behavior so that I can attend to this so then everything's fine? And that's a problem on my behalf.
Do you ever create any kind of like rules for yourself, any sort of boundaries, like based on experience? You say, okay, if this happens again, this is what I'm going to do. Or I'm going to make a certain rule about certain kinds of behavior, certain kinds of people. And I'm going to say, this I don't tolerate, this I don't accept, whatever. And then stick with the rule.
So this was something that I actually had been working on with my therapist from like when I was like 20, right? Like when I first started out, and again, this had to do with like cultural things. It's like, well, if they hit you or if they cheat on you, then like that's it, right? But then it's like, that's not enough. Like, what about everything else that a relationship encompasses and how they treat you? So now I think I have, like, I wrote them down. I think I have, like, I don't know, like 12 or 15 things that it's like, this is not acceptable. This is not acceptable. And I write it down so that I look at it, so that I see it. Because if not, in this regard, for whatever reason, I don't maintain boundaries. Like, I'm just like, oh, it's okay. Like, I understand why they acted that way. Like, I can't be so hard on them. I need to be more empathetic and sympathetic. Like, I'm being too much. Like, I gaslight myself essentially, but then it just becomes, and I was having a conversation with a friend of mine yesterday. At the end of the day, it just comes back to, but I wouldn't have done this to you, and I've never done this to you. So why is it okay for you to do it to me? And that's kind of where I'm at.
Mhm. So are you able to kind of like keep up with these rules? Once you've written them down, once you've decided, okay, here's the rule, are you able to enforce that, stick with that?
Well, if I'm being completely honest, I think I wrote them down like in April. So it's still very
It's still
new
too,
for
yeah.
me. Yeah, this is like a new aspect of my life that I'm now establishing
Okay.
boundaries and working on.
Would you say that you're able to assert yourself well in your relationships? Or actually, you know what? Expand that even further. Not just romantic relationships, but just in general with people. Good at asserting yourself when you feel you need to.
I feel like I'm getting better at it. I feel like for a long time I was not good at that at all. I was very like, let me just do what they want, to kind of like keep the peace, not so much to avoid
Mhm.
conflict, because I don't mind conflict. I don't mind addressing conflict, but there are just certain things where I'm like, I don't really need to insert myself in this. Like, I'm okay just hanging back, letting somebody else, take charge. But if something doesn't align with what I think is like ethically or morally correct, then I'm going to go ahead and step in and say something. Or if I think that something can be done in a more efficient manner, especially when it comes to somebody's care, I'm going to go ahead and step in and say something, or raise a point.
And especially when you need your wheelchair, your walker brought up to the third floor, and and you need a little muscle to kind of help out with that.
Right. So see, that was a point in my life where I was definitely a lot, I'd say, like, weaker at asserting myself or stating what I need out of fear. And yeah, I really appreciated that.
You're welcome. I had a lot of fun with that too. It's just like, give me
Yeah,
a
I know
reason
you
to
did. I know you
hit you
did.
with this damn wheelchair. So, do you find yourself? Do you ever feel like you're people pleasing out of curiosity?
Oh yeah, that's also been a big theme for me this year, was understanding what that is, how it is that I do it, and how I can stop doing it. And the very first thing that I told myself was like, well, if you don't want to do it, then don't freaking do it. Um so that's kind of where I'm at right now. But yeah, I was actually working on a design. It was like the recovering people pleasing club. Like, that was like a design of mine that I've been working on the last month with a friend of mine. So yeah, I've noticed that and been made aware of that recently. So I'm trying to
What's
address
this?
that.
What's this design exactly?
So it's like, I think it's a heart, like a cartoon of a heart on the back. There's two designs. One's like a broken heart, a cartoon animated broken heart, and one is like a heart hugging itself. And
Mhm.
excuse me, it says recovering people pleaser club, or people pleasing club. I was trying to make like a graphic design for it, because I was speaking to one of my friends. She's in the Coast Guard actually, and she's like, I've struggled with people pleasing my entire life. Like, I'm trying to establish my space and take up space. And we were also talking about how in certain regards we would get offended when somebody wouldn't not do things but react a certain way towards us, when we've always like reacted a certain way towards them to kind of make their life easier or comfort them. And it's like, why can't you do that for me, specifically in romantic relationships? And speaking about how we hold our friendships to such a high level that our relationships need to be held at the same level or higher, because if our friends treat us this certain way, then our romantic partners should treat us that way as well. um so things like that.
Hmm. I'm wondering, like, why is it that you seem to get into? It makes it sound like you have friendships that are stronger, or you're being treated the way you want to be, whereas within romantic relationships, it's not always the case.
Yeah, that and that's also something that I realized recently, and that seems to have been a constant theme in my life prior.
Why, I wonder, like, where's this imbalance coming from, in a sense?
I'm not sure, to be honest. Again, it could come down to my childhood. It could come down to a lot of things,
Okay.
but um, yeah, my friendships. I hold my friendships very, very dearly, and my friends, I'd say for the most part, have treated me better, or I felt better and more myself in my friendships than in my romantic relationships in the past.
Interesting. Hmm. So, pivoting to something less invasive, um, what are some things you admire in other people that you don't think you have in yourself?
So I admire when somebody is able to take up space, unapologetically be themselves. That's something that I really admire from somebody. You know, sometimes I'll be able to pick up on somebody's behavior and I'm like, "Oh, they're going to react poorly to that." And then I kind of have to like talk to them and be like, "Hey, it's not that big of a deal. Everything's fine. Everything's okay." But at the end of the day, I'm really glad that they can at least react in their genuine way instead of having to sit back and kind of mediate their response or their behavior, because I do find myself mediating my reactions to things a lot so that I can be emotionally mature, or so that I can get my point across in a better manner in a way that the other person is going to understand. And yeah.
Well, that's interesting. It's kind of a direction I didn't expect, but like, oop, hold on. Gotta make sure this is going okay. So, asserting themselves. Hmm, that's funny because I feel like that just kind of got me into trouble all the time.
Yeah, like it can get people into trouble. And again, you know, I think that I think that I was not given permission a lot of the time, or made feel like I didn't have permission to react in like my first, my immediate reaction. Like I wasn't given that. So I have, like, when I'm angry, for example, but again, this seems to be a very constant theme in a lot of women's lives that I've spoken to recently. When I get angry, I shut down. I don't blow up. I don't yell. I don't, first of all, I don't think that that's appropriate. I don't think that that's respectful. So I don't do those things. But I don't communicate when I'm upset. I'll tell you I'm upset and I need space, because I know that if I don't, I'm going to say something that I don't mean that's hurtful, or I'm going to express myself in a way that I don't want to express myself. So then it gives me time to cool down, and whether that's a couple minutes, hours, or a day later, I'll circle back and then we can address the issue. But I need you to let me calm down, because I am instinctively a hot-headed person, but because, and I've spoken about this, because of my condition, I don't get to be hot-headed because it negatively affects me for a longer period of time. Whereas somebody, they get mad and then 30 minutes later they're fine. I get mad and I'm like screwed for the whole day, and then it affects my next day. So I also don't like people having that amount of power over me either. I don't let people have that amount of power over me. I just take my space, I calm down, and then I'll address whatever it was when I feel that I can.
So many things to juggle for you. Wow. So, what's going on with doing it disabled lately? What's happening over there? What's been interesting for you? What's some interesting cases?
So, well, the most interesting thing that's happening for me, in my opinion, this week is that I'm actually meeting Catalina for the first time in LA this week for the Rolettes experience. So, for those who don't know who the Rolettes are, they're a group of dancers who are all in wheelchairs, and they dance and they educate other individuals and teach them how to dance in their wheelchairs and make dance accessible to individuals in mobility aids. So I'm really excited to go to that conference and to meet Catalina for the first time. And circling back a little bit to my relationships, I've made a lot of relationships on social media that I've maintained for years, and they're some of my strongest friendships. And sometimes I haven't even met these people in real life. And Catalina is a great example of that. I have a podcast with her, and we're friends, but I've never met her in real life. So I'm really excited for that. But last week we had an individual by the name of Ali, and she runs an account called Seated Perspectives. So she's a freelance writer, and she is able to give her perspective as being, an individual in a wheelchair with a spinal cord injury. And, we've had patients who have and guest hosts who have EDS, Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which is not rare at all. It's just underdiagnosed. Um, all sorts of conditions and people from all over the world that we've been able to interview. I just had the pleasure of interviewing um, a mom out of Australia who's a speech pathologist who has um, three neurodivergent kids. So it's like, we're tapping into all these different spaces, and a husband and a wife who started a company for accessible clothing for braille. So like their clothing has these textile features that you can run your hand across, and then the person who's visually impaired or blind, they know that the color that they're wearing is yellow, or like, or it has something written on it for them. So all these spaces I get to go into for accessibility, and while still interviewing, fashion, medicine, the arts. So I think it's cool.
Seems in your case you're very focused on, I would call it practical problem solving for other people. So in the case of various people with disabilities, it's like you seem to get quite a kick out of being able to be helpful in a pragmatic way to these people.
I didn't have a mentor. I didn't have somebody ahead of me with the same condition. So I didn't even know if that was possible or what that looked like. So when I started my Instagram account, it was just a pre-PA account. It wasn't anything else. And then after I got my diagnosis, I decided to go public with it. And that's where a lot of people started coming out of the woodworks and being like, hey, nobody knows, but I'm in nursing school and I have this condition, or I have this other condition. How did you get through it? And so people have told me for a while that I'm kind of like a template for some people. I'm kind of showing them this is a possibility. And so I think that the podcast does that for others with their respective conditions, or just showing them this is a possibility. You can go this route if you want to, and this is what it looks like for me. Take what I've done and adapt it for yourself, which disabled people are wonderful at doing. We're wonderful at adapting. So it's like we just need to know that the possibility exists, and we'll take it and roll with it.
Well, again, this is one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on here, because you're a remarkable human being for everybody to see, get to know. There you go. I guess one of the things I was wondering is just like how to sort of describe some of the type stuff, because you're actually somebody that doesn't really know any of it, which is unusual and refreshing in a way.
Yeah, I just know you keep calling me emotional, and I'm like, shut the fuck up. Like, like leave me alone, man. Let me feel my feelings. I have them for a reason.
Oh boy. Like, well, it's like it's the truth. What do you want me to tell you?
What? Like I'm supposed to be a robot? Let the AIs do that.
Well, she's a little bit
You
emotional.
love me for it.
She's a bit emotional sometimes. So you know what? No, I guess that gets kind of messy. Yeah, really, what I would say actually as a type, and this is perhaps more just for audience and so on, because they're like, when's he gonna get to it already? To me, you strike me more as an IEE. There's a crap. I know you're gonna be like, what the right?
ET home.
Yeah,
Like I have no
basically,
idea.
And basically, it's a type of person that tends to really value, let's call it, just doing different things, a lot of exploring, but particularly with people. They really tend to focus on the possibilities of people in particular, different kinds of people, different kinds of culture, different ways of life, different ways of looking at things, different ways of doing things, um, different um, ways of also kind of like trying to understand people. So one of the things that this type can do sometimes is be very, very open-minded to different kinds of people and different kinds of approaches that people can have. It's like, let me try to better understand someone. Let me try to put myself in their shoes. Let me try to see where they're coming from. Even sometimes when maybe you shouldn't, right? Even in situations where maybe you could just take what that person is doing or has done, and you should probably separate yourself or write them off. But in a way, you're kind of like, but maybe I need to see it another way. Maybe I'm not seeing maybe there's something else about them that I should give it a chance. I should look around and, see what else I could do. Right. So it's a type that is known to be very curious, again, in the world, but very much focused on people in particular. So a deep curiosity towards different kinds of people. Um, it's a very extroverted type overall that tends to have a lot of hobbies and curiosities about stuff. So you talked a lot about different interests that you have that bounce around. And there's some stuff that you didn't even really bring up that I know about. There's other historical interests, music and different kinds of music, um, religious stuff, right? There's a lot of where it keeps expanding into more and more areas. Um, so it's something that they're particularly known for. You seem overall good with people. It seems like it doesn't matter kind of the environment. We could almost put you anywhere and you'd find a way to get along with people. But it seems that you're much more focused on your personal connections to certain people. Right? There's specific people in your life that you tend to care a lot about and forming tight bonds with them. Um, Now, some weak areas, though, or weaker, you seem to be aspiring or working hard to get good at the practical side of things.
Mm.
How to do things, how to make things better, how to make things more efficient and workable for those people that you're interested in or for the people that the cause you're trying to help, right? It's like the people component and being creative and exploring stuff comes naturally to you. You seem to do that rather easily. Where you're trying to kind of get better and growing into it is, how do I do these things in a practical way? How do I figure out real tangible results that work? I don't care about the theory. I don't care what it's supposed to do or how, whatever. That's not interesting. I just want what is actually going to work. Is this going to get the job done for whatever situation I'm in or whatever person I'm dealing with? Right. Sensory stuff, well, we would describe it that way. Your assertiveness, you mentioned you're kind of like, it doesn't pop up much, first off. And when it does pop up, you mentioned that you're kind of like working on it. You're sort of getting better, like, I'm trying to sort of assert myself more and do things. And ultimately, a lot of things you're doing seems it's more about the personal feeling of helping other people and so on. It's not at all about any sort of tangible benefit. It's not about a paycheck. It's not about improving your house or your lifestyle or obtaining a better job, a position of authority or rank. I don't have any interest in any of those things. It's just, I just kind of want to help people, pretty much. Now, what's a little bit weird for you is how well you sort of manage your physical space, the harmony, enjoying yourself, just being in a comfortable environment. You're able to kind of do that to some degree, but what makes it a little weird for typing purposes, you have a very unusual condition, which has forced you to sort of deal with certain things and get very good at certain things that probably your type usually doesn't do. they don't get that good at it, at taking care of themselves, especially physically. Um, it's usually something they like to have help in.
Yeah, I don't like to have people help me in that regard.
Hmm. In this case, why?
I think because it makes me feel like a burden.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm somebody that likes to be very self-sufficient. One of the biggest things when I was diagnosed was I was relying on people for certain things, more so emotionally, like or like if something happened to me, knowing that they knew where I was and that they could attend to me if they could get to me. And that sometimes is still a theme because of the condition that I have. It can be very scary sometimes for me. But the first thing that I was working on was how can I independize in independent in español. It's in Spanish. It's like how can you become independent? Um, that
Mm-hmm.
was like the first thing that I was working on because I didn't want to have to rely on people. So even if it was like, hey, you have my location, can you just make sure I get from this place to this place, but I'm not going to contact you while I'm getting to that location, that was enough distance for me and that didn't feel like a burden where it's like, oh, all they have to do is just check to make sure, and if not, then they'll contact me. But like, I'm getting there. I got myself there. I'm doing it. I'm handling it by myself. I'm able to do it by myself has always been a big deal to me.
Okay. Okay. I'm just thinking about that as like there's a couple ways to sort of view that. But still, as you say, being more independent, learning how to take care of yourself, and in a very realistic way. You mentioned before that theory. I don't hear anything about rules, structure, and I know a little bit. You're not that structured in your daily life and like how you approach things. You're just like, I'm gonna go do this now. Like, like,
Yeah, the
yeah.
most structure I have in my day are my meals.
And out of necessity.
And out of necessity. Everything else is kind of, I'll make a to-do list and let's see what I get done, but the time that it gets done is irrelevant.
Pretty much. Okay. You don't care for philosophy or any kind of theory. You mentioned before that when it came to um, like lab work, chemistry, biology, that kind of stuff, that you're just kind of like, yeah, I need to kind of hands on do it. And the theoretical, like whatever, let's just kind of do it and it works. Yay, fine, good enough. So it's like a lot of the theory, a lot of the speculating, a lot of the background doesn't seem to really matter very much to you. You're ignoring that.
Right, but that's different for me than history. I appreciate and I find interest in the history of things, understanding how we got to a certain point, but debating how or why I don't really care about because that doesn't change what actually happened.
Hmm. So you just kind of are interested in the facts. This is what it is, but not really interested in speculating on what could have been or how else it could have gone down.
I'm not interested in speculating.
What is it about the speculating that you don't like?
I find it meaningless.
But why?
I don't know. I just find it meaningless. I find like biomedical ethics interesting, like debating whether or not something should be done, but then that's because something's going to be implemented, right?
Mhm.
So I guess there's a process to that. Like debating what should be done is different than debating again, like a bigger question, like what's the meaning of life? Who the hell's gonna figure that out? Not us. So why am I gonna talk about it?
Since you bring that up, out of curiosity, um, I guess this really just ties into all the philosophy stuff, but something like that, like what is the meaning of life? What is our purpose in life, or whatever the hell? I guess that kind of philosophical thought you find meaningless.
I can answer it for you and what I think it is. But other
Hmm.
than that,
What do you think
I
it
don't
is?
really care.
What do you think it is?
I think we're spiritual beings having a human experience. So I think this is the life that we were given. What are we going to do with it? How are we going to enjoy it? How are we going to help those around us if we have the ability to? And I think that that's the meaning of life. I mean, maybe that's too simple, but that's how I think about it. It's like, we're going to meet certain people, but at the end of the day, we're only going to meet so many people. We're only going to have so many heartbeats. So what are you going to do with it? Am I going to talk about why I have a heartbeat? No, I have it. Okay. I have one. What am I going to do with it? You know?
And yeah, I would say that you're not really interested in pushing your viewpoints on other people.
No, and at the end of the day, I'm not going to convince somebody else, or I don't feel that it's my job to convince somebody else to have my viewpoints. The only thing that maybe I would say I kind of, not that I force other people to partake in, but I kind of try and have other people see my point of view, is when people are very explosive or blow up or get very stressed out. Something that I always say is, "We're gonna die." I'm always saying that. I say that constantly. I'm like, "We're gonna die, bro. Like, is this that important?" Like, the other day, the vacuum exploded because it got taken out improperly, right? Went everywhere. Somebody was coming over to the house. It wasn't gonna look nice. Shit happens. Like, are you gonna get mad about that? But again, I can't get mad all the time. I can't let little things bother me. So it's like, am I gonna get mad if or upset if a loved one of mine gets hurt? Yes. But am I gonna get mad because the vacuum exploded or somebody cut me off? Nah, I'm just gonna sit there and be like, you do you, boo. Like, you didn't hit my car. I hope you get to where you're going safely. I hope you have a great day. Like, I'm not gonna, I go hunt and then count it. For what, bro? For what? I'm gonna get hot. It's hot outside. For what?
So you're not going to pull another Miami's daily traffic.
No.
Coño, me cago en la vida.
No, it's just gonna raise my blood pressure and cause me to have a stroke sooner. Like,
Yeah, again, out of necessity to survive there. Um, wow, it's like I'm just proud of like maintaining my fascination. So one of the things I found interesting was this idea that there's certain personalities or personality types that benefit one another.
mm,
There's a lot of different systems, but in the one we're focusing on, it's called the benefit rings or benefit
okay.
cycles, where you can benefit basically from a different type, right? They just have that they're an ability in a particular area that they're good at that another type can learn from or draw inspiration from or get some kind of good benefit from that, whatever. Now, one of the reasons I was like really interested in asking some questions to kind of like refine my thoughts was that I think you're one of those types that benefit me.
Look at that.
Yeah.
Mira eso.
And you're just like, okay, I didn't even do anything yet. Um, but basically, in a way, it's like, yeah, I think so. And that's kind of one of the things I wanted to get down to the bottom of. Just like, are you what I think you are? And maybe that's the reason why I get all excited when you come around and stuff. It's like I think I benefit from you.
Wow.
Unfortunately, I think it might only go one way, so you probably get shit from me. But from my point of view, I'm like, huh, yeah, wow, thanks. It's like I think you benefit, yeah. Like, hmm. Now, something I was expecting or I was hoping to see, just because it would be really textbook. Um, if you brought up something about being very interested in other people that are like really good at taking care of the day-to-day things, um, maintaining a nice space, maintaining a comfortable
Oh,
environment.
yeah. Oh, yeah. There I have a friend of mine from Instagram. She does such a great job at, like, maintaining her space, and everything's so aesthetic, and the minimalism and the functionality. I love that. I'm like, "You do you, queen." Like, I love that for you. But I'm gonna be out here with, like, my 50 books and my artwork that doesn't match, and, like, you know, because that is how I like, my whole wall is just art and frames that don't match. So,
And take care of you physically, which of course with your condition is very important.
mm.
So that would be another one. Oh, and probably cook.
Oh my god, if somebody wants to cook for me, yeah.
So that's something else that we would predict, that normally for your type, that's an area that you don't do particularly well, is maintaining the day-to-day stuff. So it could be your physical space, um, keeping things nice and pretty, keeping things nice and organized, maintaining yourself physically. Could be food and enjoying those kind of sensory pleasures, making sure you eat, making sure you eat right, making sure you don't get hurt, um, making sure the bed is comfortable, making sure you're, you know, what else am I missing? Even other things as simple as taking out the trash, making sure this is done, dishes are washed, other things are, bills are paid for, the car is working, the car is working fine. You know, like all of these day-to-day things that we all need to do that make our life kind of run smoothly.
Mm.
We would predict that your type would be one of those that would really appreciate that. You'd really
Oh,
enjoy
hell
that
yeah.
from someone
I'm an
else.
acts of service kinda girl.
Perfect. Finally, couldn't say it better myself. There it is. Yeah, pretty much. Um, Again, I don't want to get too technical because it's just like all this crazy psychobabble stuff to you. But basically, that's kind of what I was expecting you to kind of say. So I guess we kind of
What
got that.
types are those? Can I write them down? How do I
Oh, there's a bunch of them. And one of the things that we would get into is like, okay, we would say that there's about 16 different types
Right,
total.
okay. That I think I knew, but I don't know much
And then
else.
of those types, they get broken down into 4 groups
Mhm.
of 4. So
Okay.
4 of them within 4 different groups. And then in this particular system, we would call those groups, we'd give them the Greek names. So we call them alpha, beta, gamma, and delta, right? Just to
Okay.
differentiate the different groups.
Mhm.
I think that you would be part of the delta quadra, we're going to call it. It's the delta
Cute.
quadra.
Love that.
And you could say that every group has its own little self contained ecosystem going on in there. So there's 4 types in there, and they all kind of like mutually help each other and support each other in different ways. There's different things that they're good at. Uh, in your case, you would be kind of like the more social butterfly of your group. You would be the one that really brings the creativity, the inspiration, the different people, and being very sociable at bringing in new people and new idea, all that kind of stuff to your particular quadra. Now, in theory, the type of person that would be your so-called your perfect match, let's call it, would be the person who's kind of like your opposite. They value the same things that you value. They're interested in those things, but they have it all backwards. So what they would be good at is taking care of the day-to-day stuff. They do that very well and instinctively. They, the cooking, the cleaning, they're making sure bills are paid, they're going to work and doing this and that. They do that very well, but they're usually very kind of low-key people that are almost a little bit too introverted in some cases. And when left to their own devices, they might kind of hide in a hole, socially speaking. So what they need is kind of someone like you who's good at pulling them out of that little hole a little bit, kind of going, hey, let's like interact with people, and ooh, look what I found, it's fun over here, have you seen this before, hold on, and you sort of bring a little bit of like this fun, almost like chaotic energy, but like a fun chaotic energy that kind of helps bring them a little stimulation and brings them back to life. while they are best at taking care of all of these day-to-day things, the physical things of life that need to get done. And that's how you mutually sort of complement each other. And this is where we get into an idea of duality, as it's called, where it's the meeting of two opposites. Think of it like yin and yang kind of coming together. They're usually very relaxed, low-key people. Sometimes they're too boring, sadly. And that's where you bring the fun.
I also like to nap, so.
Well, you guys are kind of like the mellow group too.
I love that for me.
You guys are like the humble, mellow quadro that are easygoing. You're not really trying to impose yourself on people. You're not trying to impose or change the world. You're not interested in that kind of stuff. But in your case, again, you're very good at finding causes that genuinely help people in a practical way and exploring the lives of other people. You get a kick out of that. It's probably where the journalism comes into play again. Just exploring different kinds of people, different ways of life, different ways of seeing things, different ways of seeing the world. And that's interesting to you.
Yeah.
Now I wonder, would you say you get bored easily, of curiosity?
Mm-hmm.
Why the reluctant? Like,
I'm like, yeah, I guess.
but why are you hesitating like that?
I think it's because when I get bored, I'm trying to maintain my enthusiasm for the other person. And then I'm also trying to create enthusiasm for myself. So when I get bored, I'm like, fuck, here we go again.
So you get bored easily, I take it.
I don't know. I don't know if it's easily, but when I get bored, I get bored.
So why do you feel the need to maintain the enthusiasm for other people?
I don't know. Again, it's that people pleasing, like the making a comfortable environment for others to express themselves or share things. Yeah.
Hmm.
Mhm. But when I entertain myself, let me tell you.
Oh, do tell. How do you entertain yourself?
No, like if I'm like collaging, let's say, I will collage and I will entertain myself. You can leave me alone and I'm good. You're like, oh, Haley, she's collaging. Like,
Collaging. Wow. Oh my goodness. How many tickets did you get for the 1975 now?
I'm going again in October.
Did you get front row seats yet?
No, they weren't disabled seats, but I'm closer.
It's just flashing zone. Maddie, I'm here. I'm here.
I love this new album. It's so good.
Wow. Well, I think that's about enough of this. Probably I'm going to get a ton of hate, I'm sure, but oh well. That's the internet
You
life
did
for
it.
you.
You interviewed me.
And yeah, again, there's more to show you when it comes to the psych stuff, but again, that's going to take a lot. Because generally, a lot of the people who do these things have some familiarity. So there's a little bit of makes it just easier to sort of explain certain things or what it is that you think that they are and why and all that without having to like completely from the Rudy to the Tootie explain it all.
Got it.
So you're like, whatever.
Thank you, everyone.
And we'll be putting the doing it disabled on there.
Woo!
Okay. I'm betting a nap is coming for you now, right?
Yeah, like 20 minutes.
Yeah, you're like, I'm tired of this asshole. Like, okay. Bye.